4 o'clock on Wall Street and in Washington. Do you know where your money is? Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Closing Bell. I'm Maria Bartiromo in our nation's capital today. The S&P 500 closing at another all-time high tonight. This market picked up steam going into the close. Final hour of trading. Take a look at how we're settling out on the street today with the market near the highs of the day, up 61 points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The gains basically doubled from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern on Wall Street. 15,570 is where the industrial average settles out tonight. NASDAQ Composite picked up some strong ground as well, up 14.5 points by the close, 1/3% at 39.43. And the Standard & Poor's 500 index at an all-time high, uncharted territory at 1759.79 with a gain of 7 3/4 points, almost 0.5% on the day. Joining me right now to break down today's market action, Stephanie Link back with us from the street, Rich Peterson from S&P Capital IQ, Ken Mahoney from Mahoney Asset Management. Good to see everybody. Thanks very much for joining us. Rich, let me kick this off with you because I guess this earnings story that Bob Pisani was just talking about is pretty compelling. How come earnings are now seen rising 4.5%? And interestingly, revenue looking at an expectation of 4% growth there. What's going on? What are you seeing within these earnings reports for the third quarter?
Sure, Maria. As the Beatles once said, it's getting better all the time. The fact is, when we started the earnings season, when Alcoa reported back on October 8th, we were looking for 3%. Now we're at 4.5. But in fact, 8 of the 10 S&P sectors have seen substantial increases in earnings expectations over that time. In fact, 4 have seen more than doubling of expectations from where we were October 8th, notably technology, materials, healthcare, and financials. Case in point, technology, where back on October 8th, we were looking for 2.6%. Now we're looking at 5.8%. We're seeing really a boom. In fact, if we get above 5.2% for the quarter, and in fact, if we have more than half of the S&P to report, we will have the best quarter of the year.
Stephanie Link, we talked earlier about some of the big names coming out next week. Apple, Facebook, definitely going to really set the tone for some of these tech names. Chevron, Exxon. Where are the names that you would actually dip into and buy stocks ahead of their earnings? Is there anything compelling out there that you would actually get ahead of their earnings that are coming out next week?
Well, what has been interesting to me during this earnings season so far, and particularly this week, is the global companies that have reported better than expected numbers. So DuPont, Freeport, Boeing, 3M, Ford, they all have a common theme, and that is international. Not only just U.S., but international. So I think you still want to be buying, as your guests earlier in the program said, you want to buy Europe, you want to buy Japan. I think you want to buy companies that have exposure to China. And so when I look and see which companies are out there on the industrial side, I like Cummins, I like Emerson. Those two companies, I think, if you got a pullback, you want to be buying those names. I think on the consumer side, if you want to buy a Michael Kors, that is certainly an international story eventually happening. So I think you want to be buying that on a pullback. And certainly some of the growth tech. We were selling Facebook this week, taking some gains. If that stock were to pull back, we'd be buying that one. And certainly Apple has definitely great momentum here in the short term.
Well, what a great success that was for you. You sold it above 50 on Facebook, yeah, I guess, or around 50.
We did, yeah. And we had a 92% gain. So you can't be greedy. But we still hold some, yeah, so that if if it comes back, it certainly is a great growth story. And I think that's also a theme this quarter is growth technology, not traditional old technology, but it's really the growth technology that is working.
Ken Mahoney, how do you allocate capital today? Tell us how you see it.
Well, this is definitely choppiness with an upward bias, and I think that will continue just like we've seen in the last few weeks. And I really think this is the ultimate Teflon market. Not much really sticks to it. Nothing negative sticks to it for too long anyway. And I'm sure that frustrates short sellers and bears alike. And a great example, last week we saw IBM miss. Now in quarters past, if IBM missed, it would take the whole market down along with it. That didn't happen. We actually saw IBM go lower and the stock market went higher. A couple times last week we saw some soft numbers for the economy. That doesn't stick to the market either because that just pushes out the tapering. And finally, yeah, what we saw in Congress, this uncertainty, that just pushes tapering down the road. So what we're left with is low interest rates, and stocks should thrive with a low interest rate environment.
Yep. Yeah, I understand. I mean, that's what certainly the story is. In fact, when I talk with CEOs and managers of businesses, they keep saying the fundamental story is not bad. And in fact, it's really the dysfunction in Washington getting in the way that's really, creating this period of uncertainty.
Maria, do you know, when I was on the Eaton conference call today, and the CEO specifically said that September, the first 2 weeks of September were great, and the last 2 weeks of September fell off dramatically because of Washington. And since then, in October, business actually has picked up. And so I think that's very encouraging. If that is a trend, that's something to be very excited about.
It's a great point to make. You know what? Michael Farr is here with me from Farr Miller in Washington. I want to get his take on this as well. Michael, good to see you. We're talking about this uncertainty. And, Stephanie was on the Eaton call, the conference call, and basically they said, look, the first 2 weeks of September were great. The last 2 weeks we saw, so this stuff matters. It actually dictates behavior for corporates and individuals. I mean, the dysfunction.
No question about it, Maria. And we saw it today, I think, too, in the consumer confidence numbers that were down and well below expectations. When people are uncertain, they keep their hands in their pockets, they keep their dollars tightly clenched, and they're not going to spend. We've seen that in consumer numbers. We've seen it in Walmart's earnings as well. So I think it affects volumes. It trims certainly some off of GDP prospectively and currently. This matters, and these guys are jerks.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about this.
They're just jerks, seriously. I mean, there's no way around it. They're not leading.
They're not leading, their politics.
Stop being around the bush.
They're not leading. They're politicking. And, as CNBC says, Maria, they need to win us back. And I don't even think they care about winning us back.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good point that you make. So what do you do about the fundamental issues then in terms of the budget? How do you get the conversation going?
Well, I mean, in terms of what we have to accomplish here in Washington, certainly we've got to come to the table and figure out what we're going to do about a debt ceiling, and we can't make any progress unless we deal with entitlements, and they've got to know that by now.
I think they probably do know that, but nobody wants it on their watch. Who was jumping in there? Was that you, Ken?
I feel like there is a ceiling here for stocks. Again, we all support stocks here. Like I said, the Teflon market, things don't really seem to stick, but there's also a ceiling in place thanks to the shenanigans in Washington. And really, all they really did is hit the snooze button, right? They hit the snooze button, and the alarm's going to be going off again pretty soon. They'll do like an 11th-hour deal.
They're on the snooze button already,
Yeah, they're still snoozing,
That's a good
And
analogy.
the problem is, and at the end of the day, it really takes away from confidence. So why I think we get some rallies, there'll be some profit taken because some of these deadlines will be looming and traders know that. And so I think we're going to be chopping around with an upward bias, but this ceiling's place thanks to the shenanigans that's going on in Congress.
But we're getting I think we're getting to the bad news is good news again. I mean, the bad news today and this continued uncertainty that we're just going to face this again in the first quarter means that the Federal Reserve's going to stay there. They're going to keep supplying money, and our new Fed chairperson, Janet Yellen, is our new monetary mama. I think she is going to make sure that the milk keeps flowing, and Wall Street is buying. I don't think stocks are cheap right now either.
The monetary mama. Well, not if Rand Paul has his way, so we'll see about that.
I think he's got trouble.
There's some issues there as well, based on the news today. So, Stephanie, what do you want to do here in terms of putting money to work? You basically just talked about a couple of names that you would buy. Anything that you want to short right here?
Well, actually, we raised cash in August and in September. We thought that we'd get some volatility. We've been putting more money into the market. I would say this, though. We have been very much cyclical focus, right? All of the industrials and the materials and those kinds of things. Some technology, definitely the financials. We actually started to broaden out, though, the portfolio this week into some of the staple stocks, like a P&G, because it's good to have diversification. It's good to have a little bit of a balance. So we've been taking profits along the way just in the last couple of weeks, but kind of just putting it back in where we see opportunity.
All right, we will leave it there. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your time today. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Maria.
We will see you soon. Meanwhile, as just mentioned, more dysfunction here in our nation's capital. Politico.